Hello everyone, welcome back to Fires of Kaladesh MTG. Today we are doing another deck tech on the lovely to pronounce Asmoranomardicadaistinaculdacar, everyone's favourite Rakdos chef. She is a rather unique card, and she doesn't actually have a casting cost. So as long as you've discarded a card this turn, you can pay 1 black or red to cast this spell. And when Asmoranomardicadaistinaculdacar enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a card named the Underworld Cookbook. Reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. And then her last ability is you can sacrifice 2 foods, and target creature will deal 6 damage to itself. So as you can probably imagine, we're going to go for a bit of a discard deck here, whether it's ourselves discarding, trying to throw as much discard for the opponents as possible. This is a little bit meaner than what my usual deck techs are. But let's dive right in. And so, as always, we're going to start off with our land base. We've got a lot of basic lands in here. Only the 5 non-basics this time around. And I have chosen... So, we have Desert of the Fervent. It's enters tapped. You can tap it for a red. However, it has the cycling ability. So for 1 and a red, you can discard this card to draw a card. Which is obviously very useful later on in the game. If you don't need the land... Obviously always useful to be able to have those extra discard abilities. Next one is Forgotten Cave. Again, comes in tapped, adds a red. Cycling of just 1 red for this one. Desert of the Glorified. Again, enters tapped, adds for a black. Or you can pay 1 and a black to cycle. Ash Barrens is one which I've never really played myself, to be honest, but is a really, really nice, simple land. So you can tap for colourless. It has basic land cycling 1, so you can pay 1 to discard this card, search load for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand. And then lastly, we have a Gaia Reach Sanitarium. It's a legendary land which you can tap for colourless. You can pay 2 and tap. Each player draws a card and then discards a card. So nice and simple. Let's move on to the enchantments next. And to start things off, we are going to start with Raider's Wake. It's 3 and a black, and whenever an opponent discards a card, that player's going to lose 2 life. And then it's got Raid, so at the beginning of your end step, if you attack with a creature this turn, target opponent discards a card. Really simple, but really quite nice. Faith of the Devoted is 2 and a black, so whenever you cycle or discard, you can pay 1. And if you do, each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. Curse of Fool's Wisdom is a bit of a pricey one at 4 and 2 black. It's an aura curse, so enchant player. Whenever enchanted player draws a card, they lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. And this of course also had the lovely ability of Madness, so you pay 3 and a black. If you discard this card, discard it into exile. When you do, you can cast it for its Madness cost or put it into your graveyard. And then the last enchantment we have is a bit of an old one. It's called Brink of Madness. So it's 2 and 2 black. During your upkeep, if you have no cards in hand, sacrifice a Brink of Madness and target opponent discards his or her hand. Which obviously we'd be discarding a lot of cards, playing a lot throughout this one. So odds are you're probably going to end up top decking quite a lot. And obviously it's just nice to be able to fully remove somebody else's hand. So next we're going to go on to sorceries. I am running a lot of sorceries in this one, to be honest with you. And let's start it off with Terminal Agony. So for 2, a black and a red, you can destroy target creature. And obviously this one's got a madness cost of only a black and a red. So really nice. Avacyn's Judgment is 1 and a red, of madness of X and red. So it deals 2 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets, and if the spell's madness cost was paid, it's going to deal X damage instead, divided as you choose. Trash for Treasure is a simple one. For 2 and a red, you can, as you cast, you have to sacrifice an artifact in order to be able to return an artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield. You can see quite a lot of cards with this kind of ability, just because obviously the Underworld Cookbook is one of the main ways to be able to get food in this deck. And it's quickly going to become targeted and get taken out quite a lot. So you do need a lot of recursion when it comes to your artifacts in this one. Then we have Murderous Compulsion for 1 and a black. You can destroy target tapped creature. And it also had Madness costs, again, just for 1 and a black. Coveted Prize is one of the lesser used tutors. So 4 and a black. It costs 1 less for each creature in your party, which is of course a cleric, rogue, warrior and wizard. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, shuffle your library. If you have a full party, you may cast a spell of convert mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. And obviously not a lot of people are running the parties, but let's be honest, most decks are going to have one of these classes in them. Asmoranomardicadaistinaculdacar herself is a wizard, so obviously you're only going to be paying 4 for this as long as she's on the field. And to be honest with you, for the price that this costs to buy, it's one of my favourite shooters because it's so overlooked just because of that party mechanic ability. Next up we have Smallpox. So for 2 black, each player loses 1 life, discards a card, sacks a creature, and sacrifices a land. Taste of Death is 4 and 2 black. Each player sacrifices 3 creatures, and then you create 3 food tokens. See, really nice synergy on that one. Razakev's Right is another tutor for 3 and 2 black. Search your library for a card, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. And obviously you've got the option of cycling on this one. Let's be honest, you're probably not going to cycle away a tutor, but having that ability is always just a nice little plus side. Next up we have Bone Shards. So for 1 black, there's an additional cost to cast this spell. Sacrifice a creature or discard a card, and then lets you destroy target creature or planeswalker. Victimize is 2 and a black. You can choose 2 creature cards in your graveyard, sacrifice a creature, and if you do, return the chosen cards to the battlefield tapped. Obviously 1 for 2 is a lovely, lovely bargain, to be honest, when you're getting 2 creature cards back from your graveyard straight to the battlefield. So yeah, really recommend that one for a lot of decks, to be honest with you. Next up we have Pick the Brain. It's again an uncommon sorcery. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-layered card from it and exile that card. That's for 2 and a black. For Delirium, however, if there are 4 or more cards types among cards in your graveyard, you can search that player's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name as the exiled cards. Exile those cards, and that player shuffles his or her library. Now, obviously, in Commander being a singleton format, odds are this probably isn't going to see a lot of use when it comes to Delirium. However, if you do have people in your group that like playing Shadowborn Apostle decks or anything similar to that, obviously you can just remove all those options with just 1 card, which is really quite nice. Call to the Netherworld is just 1 black, and you can return target black creature card from your graveyard to your hand with the amazing madness cost of 0. Bad Deal is 4 and 2 black. You draw 2 cards, and each opponent discards 2 cards, and then each player loses 2 life. Persist is a very popular one from Modern Horizons 2 for 1 and a black. Return target non-legendary creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. Profane Tutor, again from Modern Horizons 2, as Suspend 2 for 1 and a black. And obviously when the last time counter has been removed, you can search your library for a card and put it in your hand and then shuffle. And then last of all, we have Aid the Fallen for 1 and a black. You can choose 1 or both. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, or return target planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. We run just the 2 planeswalkers in this deck, but one of them is quite important, so it is a nice way to be able to retrieve him at any point. And he is Duretti, the Scrap Servant. For 3 and a red, you get a legendary planeswalker. +2, discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. -2, sacrifice an artifact, and if you do, return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then -10, you get an emblem with whenever an artifact is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. Now, obviously, as we said earlier, this, let's be honest, is mainly in here just for the Underworld cookbook and the few other artifacts that we are running. But as I said, you always need to be able to recur that Underworld cookbook. So as soon as that's gone, it's very slow running, let's be honest. And then the other planeswalker we have is Davriel, Rogue Shadow Mage. So for 2 and a black, he has a loyalty of 3. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, Davriel, Rogue Shadow Mage deals 2 damage to them. And then he has a -1, target player discards a card. So now we're going to move on to the instants. We've got a small selection in here. And we're going to start it off with the good old Rakdos charm. So for 1 black and 1 red, choose 1. Exile all cards from target player's graveyard, or destroy target artifact, or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. So see, loads and loads of options. Always have an opportunity to be able to play one of those and be able to really benefit from it. Next up we have Dark Withering, which is really expensive. 4 and 2 black to destroy target non-black creature. However, obviously, it's got a madness cost of only 1 black, which is obviously what we're going to be trying to do with this one, rather than pumping out the huge 6 mana just to kill a creature at instant speed. Then we have a Bake into a Pie. It's an essential card for an Asmoranomardicadaistinaculdacar deck. So for 2 and 2 black, you can destroy target creature and create a food, of course. Lovely. Chef's Kiss, I'll be honest, is more of a flavour card in here than it is anything else. So for 1 and 2 red, you gain control of target spell that targets only a single permanent or player. Copy it, then reselect the targets at random for the spell and the copy. The new targets can't be you or a permanent you control. And then lastly, Fiery Temper is 1 and 2 red. It's going to deal 3 damage to target creature or player, but has a madness cost of only 1 red. So obviously, your potential lightning bolt. Moving on to the artifacts next, and of course, shocker of shockers, we're going to start things off with the Underworld Cookbook. So it's 1 to cast for an artifact where you can tap to discard a card and create a food token. Or you can pay 4 and tap to sacrifice the Underworld Cookbook. Don't do it. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Don't do it. It's not worth it. You need this for the food, let's be honest here. Next up, we have Key to the City. So it's 2 to cast. Tap to discard a card. Up to 1 target creature can't be blocked this turn. And whenever Key to the City becomes untapped, you can pay 2, and if you do, draw a card. So obviously, nice discard, nice draw engine, nice way to be able to get damage through to the opponents as well. The Academy Manufactor is a rather lovely card. For 3 colourless mana, you get a 1/3 artifact creature. And if you create a clue, food, or a treasure token, instead you're going to create 1 of each. Elixir of Immortality is one which I used to see in basically every single deck, but not a lot of people running it these days. I honestly don't know why. It's only 1 to cast. You can pay 2 and tap to gain 5 life, then shuffle Elixir of Immortality and your graveyard into their owner's library. Witch's Oven is our other food dispenser. You can tap to sacrifice a creature, create a food token. If the sacrificed creature's toughness was 4 or greater, instead you could be creating 2 food tokens. And then last of all, we have a Sculpting Steel. So for 3 colourless, you may have Sculpting Steel enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact on the battlefield. Odds are you're probably going to be choosing your cookbook for this one. Obviously being able to have 2 cookbooks, double up the foods every single turn, use Asmora's ability practically every single turn as well. Just a really nice advantage to be able to wipe out as many creatures as possible of your opponents. And then last of all, we move on to creatures. And being a chef deck, if anyone knows anything about the history of Asmoranomardicadaistinaculdacar, you'll know that she was the chef for a Lord of the Pit. Now, Lord of the Pit is not a good card. I will be perfectly honest with you. It's a flavour card in here. So for 4 and 3 black, you get a Summon Demon. He's 7/7 with Flying and Trample. During your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. If you cannot sacrifice a creature, Lord of the Pit deals 7 damage to you, and you cannot sacrifice Lord of the Pit to himself. Yeah, so obviously a lot of people are going to be like, why on earth are you running that card? Yes, it's flavour, but let's be honest, it's not that great. No, it's not that great. However, we have a lot of creatures in here which you can recur constantly. So obviously being able to sacrifice it, then bring it back, cast it, sacrifice it constantly is a nice little plus side. And let's be honest, not a lot of people still run flying creatures. So having a massive 7/7 flyer with trample can really quickly disrupt your opponent's plans. Then we have the Hellmongrel. So for 3 and a black, you get a 4/3 Nightmare Dog. You can discard a card to give it +1/+1 till end of turn. So obviously free discard outlet. And it has a madness cost of only 2 and 1 black. Then we have the Bloodhall Priest for 2, a black and a red, for a 4/4 Vampire Cleric. And whenever Bloodhall Priest enters the battlefield or attacks, if you have no cards in hand, it's going to deal 2 damage to any target. And it's got a madness cost of only 1, a black and a red. The Heir of Falcon Reef is 1 and a black. She again has a free discard outlet on her. You can transform her. You can only use this ability once per turn. She starts as a 2/1. However, when you discard and transform, you get Heir to the Night, a Vampire Berserker 3/2 with flying. Again, not anything amazing, but flying is always a nice evasion tactic to be able to get through to your opponents. And obviously, a free discard outlet is always nice. Next we have Twins of Mora Estate. So for 4 and a black, you get a 3/5 vampire. However, for the much more attractive madness cost of 2 and a black, it's just an easy creature drop. Then we have an Asylum Visitor for 1 and a black. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, you draw a card and you lose a life. He's a 3/1 and he's got a madness cost of 1 and a black. So obviously card advantage. Blazing Rootwaller is 1 red for a lizard. He's a 1/1. You can pay a red to give him +2/+0 until end of turn, but you can only use it once per turn. But he has that beautiful madness cost of 0, which obviously means that you could potentially discard a card, this one, cast him for nothing, and still be able to get Asmoranomardicadaistinaculdacar out on the same turn. Next up is a Merciless Javelinier. For 2, a black and a red, he's a 4/2 Minotaur Warrior. You can pay 2 to discard a card, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, and that creature also can't block this turn. Archfiend of Spite is 5 and 2 black for a 6/6 flying demon. And whenever a source an opponent controls deal damage to Archfiend of Spite, that source's controller loses that much life unless they sacrifice that many permanents. And has a madness cost of 3 and 2 black. So not only is he obviously quite powerful, he's just a nice deterrent to stop people from attacking you if he's available as a blocker. Lavaborn Muse, let's be perfectly honest, is probably one of the worst muses out there, but not too bad in this deck. So for 3 and a red, you get a 3/3 Spirit. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 2 or fewer cards in hand, Lavaborn Muse is going to deal 3 damage to them. I mean, who needs to untap lands every turn, eh? Then we have Squee, Goblin Nabob. He's 2 and a red for a 1/1 legendary goblin. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return Squee, Goblin Nabob from your graveyard to your hand. Now obviously this one is useful for several reasons in this deck. It's a constant discard card, which will always return. It's a constant sack card for your Lord of the Pit. Just an essential card for any deck which revolves around discarding, to be honest with you. Then we have a Revolutionist. He's a rather expensive 5 and 1 red for a 3/3 human wizard. As he enters the battlefield, you can return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand, and he has the madness cost of only 3 and a red. Big Game Hunter is next. For 2 black and 1, you get a human rebel assassin 1/1. As he enters the battlefield, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. He can't be regenerated, and his madness cost of only 1 black. Reckless Worm is 3 and 2 red for a 4/4 trample, and again has madness of 2 and 1 red. Which obviously, 5 for a 4/4 with trample is not great, but if you do manage to get out for the madness cost, it's just a nice quick body on the field. Kitchen Imp is yet again another flavour one. For 3 and a black, you get a 2/2 Imp, flying and haste, and a madness cost of only 1. Then we have the Viashano Lashclaw for 1 and a red. He's a 2/2 where you can tap to discard a card, and creatures you control will gain haste until end of turn. Apologies. Next up we have the Chainer Nightmare Adept. So for 2, a black and a red, you get a legendary human minion 3/2. You can discard a card to cast a creature spell from your graveyard this turn. You can only activate that once each turn. And whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if you didn't cast it from your hand, it's going to gain haste until your next turn. Next up is a Grave Scrabbler. For 3 and a black, we get a 2/2, madness of only 1 and a black. And as he enters the battlefield, if its madness cost was paid, you can return a target creature card from your graveyard to its owner's hand. Hypnotic Spectre is a bit of an old school one here. 1 and 2 black for a flying 2/2. And whenever he deals combat damage to an opponent, that player discards a card at random, which is always really, really nice. Rummaging Goblins is 2 and a red for a 1/1 Goblin Rogue, where you can tap to discard and draw. The Voldaren Pariah is 3 and 2 black for a Vampire Horror. She's a 3/3 with flying. You can sacrifice 3 other creatures to transform her, which is a madness cost of only 3 black. And then when you do transform, you get a lovely 6/5 Eldrazi Vampire with flying. And when it transforms into the Abolisher of Bloodlines, you can target opponent can sacrifice 3 creatures. You don't get to destroy anything, let's be honest. Need to read these cards better. Next up, as the younger brother of the Hypnotic Spectre, is Blazing Spectre. For 2, a black and a red, you get a 2/2 with flying and haste. And then whenever he deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. We have the Gilt Blade Prowler for 2 and a black. He's a 2/3 rogue. You can pay 1 and tap him to pay 1 life, draw a card. Activate this ability only if you've discarded a card this turn, which, let's be honest, with all these cards in this deck, you're probably going to be discarding a card. Flame Blade Adept is a rather lovely 1-drop for a 1/2 with Menace, and whenever you cycle or discard a card, he's going to get +1/+0 until end of turn. The Archfiend of Ifnir is a card that has been sitting in my folders ever since Armenket. I never really considered him much good. He's 3 and 2 black for a flying 5/4 demon. However, whenever you cycle or discard another card, you put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponents control, which in this deck is actually just pure filth. Which is a really, really nice way to be able to solve any board problems. Next up, we have the Gorgon Recluse. For 3 and 2 black, you get a 2/4 Gorgon, and whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by a non-black creature, destroy that creature at the end of combat, and has a madness cost of only 2 black. Another replayable creature is the Sanitarium Skeleton. For 1 black, you get a 1/2 skeleton, where you can pay 2 and a black to return him from your graveyard to your hand. Garna the Bloodflame is next. She is a 1 black, 1 red, 3/3 human warrior with flash, and when she enters the battlefield, return to your hand all creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from anywhere this turn. And she's also going to give all your other creatures haste. Obviously, with the amount of cards we're going to be discarding, creatures we're going to be sacrificing and things like that, Garner just a really nice ability to be able to make everyone sack, including yourself, and just bring it all back, give it haste as well. Ruthless Sniper is a rather nice one for 1 black. He's a 1/2 human archer, and whenever you cycle or discard a card, you can pay 1, and if you do, you put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. Hellfire Mongrel is 2 and a red for an Elemental Hound, 2/2. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has 2 or fewer cards in hand, Hellfire Mongrel deals 2 damage to him or her. So again, just like the Lavaborn Muse. Then we have Necrogoyf. He's 3 and 2 black for a star 4, Lurgoyf. His power is equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player discards a card, and he has a madness cost of only 1 and 2 black. We're coming down to the last couple now. This is rather an essential card. Anye Falkenrath is 1, a black and a red for a 1/3 vampire with haste. And with Anye, you can tap to discard a card and draw a card. However, if you discard a card with madness, you can untap Anye and just repeat that process all over again. So obviously not only is she nice to be able to get all your madness cards out as quickly as possible, she's also a rather beautiful draw engine. And then finally we have Turak, Dread Cantor. He's a legendary human cleric for two. He's a 2/1. He has a kicker cost of just 2 black, protection from white. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you can put a +1/+1 counter on him. And if it enters the battlefield kicked, target opponent discards 2 cards at random again. So, that is a bit of a brief look into Asmoranomardicadaistinaculdacar. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you give you some ideas for a deck yourselves, whether or not you want to continue with the lovely chef theme or not. If there's anything more you'd like to see though, or any ideas which you do have for this deck, please just leave a comment. All likes and subscribes are always appreciated, and we hope to see you next time. Thanks a lot.